I found a Bigfoot in the Olympic Mountains in 1935 that shouldn't exist, and for 3 days I thought I was losing my mind. But when the creature looked at me with eyes that held more understanding than most men I'd known, when it reached out one massive hand, not in violence, but in gratitude, I realized I'd stumbled onto something far older and more sacred than anything the modern world could explain. My name is Joseph Redcrow, and this story begins when I was 25 years old. I'm Quinault, born on the reservation near Lake Quinault in Washington State, raised by a father who still remembered the old ways, and a mother who'd converted to Christianity but never quite forgot what she'd learned as a child. The year was 1935. The Depression was crushing everyone, and I was working as a logger 6 days a week just to keep my wife and infant son fed. The forest was different then. The Olympic wilderness stretched for hundreds of miles, most of it never touched by white men, some of it never walked by anyone. The trees were so old and massive that 10 men holding hands couldn't circle their trunks. The silence in those deep woods was complete. No roads, no planes overhead, no distant hum of civilization, just forest and mountain and the ancient rhythm of things growing and dying and growing again. I'd gone hunting that October weekend, tracking an elk deep into territory I'd never explored. My father had taught me to hunt the traditional way, with respect, with gratitude, taking only what we needed. But this elk had led me farther than I'd ever been, past the last logging roads, past the clearings where other hunters went, into forest, so old it felt like stepping back in time. I was maybe 20 miles from the nearest road when I lost the elk's trail near a steep ravine. The trees here were enormous, Douglas firs and western red cedars that had been growing for 500 years or more. The canopy was so thick that even at midday the forest floor was dim and cool. Moss covered everything, and the silence was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. That's when I heard the sound. It was low and deep, resonating through the trees, not quite a growl, not quite a moan, something in between. Something that made the hair on my neck stand up because my brain couldn't categorize it. Not bear, not cougar, not elk or any other animal I'd encountered in 25 years of living in these mountains. I moved toward the sound, my Winchester rifle ready, pushing through thick undergrowth of ferns and devil's club. My grandfather's voice echoed in my memory. Stories he'd told me before he passed, stories about the Stick Indians, the tall ones who walked in the deepest forest. Stories the missionaries said were just superstition. I pushed through a final curtain of ferns and stopped cold. There was a creature collapsed against a massive fallen cedar tree, partially hidden by undergrowth and shadow. My first thought was that someone had brought a gorilla into the mountains, which made no sense. My second thought was that I was looking at something that couldn't possibly be real. It was huge. Even sitting down, slumped against the tree, it was as tall as I was standing. The body was covered in dark, reddish-brown hair, thick and long, matted with mud and tree sap. The shoulders were broader than any man's, the arms disproportionately long and corded with muscle. But it was the face that made my hands shake on the rifle. Not human, not quite ape either. The face was flat with a pronounced brow ridge, a wide flat nose, and a mouth that seemed too large. But the eyes were looking right at me with an expression I recognized: pain, fear, intelligence. The creature's left leg was pinned under a section of the fallen cedar, trapped beneath thousands of pounds of wood. The leg was bent at an unnatural angle, and I could see scrapes and bruising around where the tree had it pinned. The creature had clearly been trying to free itself. The ground around it was torn up, branches were broken, and there were deep gouges in the bark where those massive hands had tried to find purchase. We stared at each other. The creature didn't move aggressively, didn't bare its teeth or make threatening sounds. It just watched me with those dark, intelligent eyes, breathing heavily, trembling slightly. I should have run. That's what any sane person would have done. I should have backed away slowly, gone home, told no one, and tried to convince myself I'd imagined it. Instead, I lowered my rifle. The creature's eyes followed the movement of the gun. Then, slowly, so slowly it was clearly deliberate, it lowered its head, not breaking eye contact, but tilting down in what looked like submission, or maybe a request. My grandfather's stories flooded back. The Stick Indians weren't demons or monsters in our old tales. They were guardians of the deep forest, spirits who maintained the balance between the human world and the wild. To encounter one was rare. To help one was sacred. To harm one brought misfortune to your entire family line. I'd always thought those were just stories to keep children from wandering too far into dangerous territory. I took a step forward. The creature tensed, but didn't try to flee or attack. Another step. I could smell it now, a musky, earthy scent like moss and rain, and something else I couldn't identify. Not unpleasant, just different, wild. I walked around to examine the situation from different angles, and the creature's eyes followed me the whole time. The cedar section pinning its leg was massive, maybe 4 feet in diameter, part of a tree that must have fallen in a recent storm. There was no way I could lift it alone, but I had my axe. I gestured to the creature, not knowing if it would understand. I pointed at the tree, then made chopping motions with my hands, then pointed at its trapped leg. The creature watched intently, then it nodded. Just once, but clear and unmistakable. It understood me. My hands were shaking as I unslung my pack and pulled out my axe. I started cutting away the smaller branches attached to the main section, working my way around the creature, creating space to maneuver. The creature remained completely still, except for its eyes, which tracked every movement I made. After about 20 minutes of work, I'd cleared enough branches to assess the main problem. The cedar section was resting on the creature's lower leg at an angle. If I could cut through one side and create a lever point, I might be able to shift it enough for the creature to pull free. I started cutting. The work was hard. The cedar was old and dense, and my axe wasn't meant for this kind of work. Sweat soaked through my shirt. Despite the cool air, my shoulders ached, but I kept cutting, aware the whole time that I was within arm's reach of something that could probably tear me apart if it wanted to. The creature never moved. Occasionally, it would make that low sound when I had to shift the wood and it caused pain, but it never tried to grab me, never showed aggression. After 90 minutes of constant work, I'd cut through enough of the cedar that I could wedge a strong branch underneath as a lever. I found a suitable fulcrum, a rock half buried in the earth, and positioned my lever. "I'm going to try to lift it now," I said, not knowing if the creature understood words, but feeling like I should explain. "When I push down, you need to pull your leg out. Understand?" The creature looked at me, then at the lever, then back at me. It positioned its hands on the ground, clearly preparing to push itself backward. "On 3, I said. 1, 2, 3. I threw all my weight onto the lever. The cedar section shifted with a grinding sound. The creature pulled, and I heard a sharp intake of breath, the first truly human-like sound it had made. But the leg came free. I released the lever and stepped back quickly, unsure what would happen next. The creature pulled itself upright, supporting weight on its good leg. Standing at full height, it was enormous, at least 7.5 feet tall, maybe more. The sheer size of it was overwhelming. We stood there in the shadowy forest, man and creature, both breathing hard from exertion. The creature tested its injured leg carefully, putting a little weight on it and wincing. Not broken then, but badly bruised and probably sprained. Then the creature did something that changed everything. It reached down and picked up the straightest, strongest branch from the ones I'd cut away, held it for a moment, testing its weight. Then it extended the branch toward me with both hands like an offering. I took it, and the moment my hands touched the wood, the creature released it and nodded once. Then it reached out with one massive hand, moving slowly, clearly showing it wasn't a threat, and touched my shoulder. Just for a second. The hand was warm, the touch gentle, despite the obvious strength. Then it turned and limped into the forest, moving surprisingly fast despite the injury, disappearing into the undergrowth within seconds. I stood alone in that clearing, holding the branch, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The evidence was all around me: the disturbed earth, the cut wood, the massive tracks in the soft ground. Tracks with 5 toes that looked almost human but were 18 inches long. I'd found something that wasn't supposed to exist, and it had thanked me. I made my way back to my truck in a daze, the branch tied to my pack. My mind was reeling. What had I just seen? What had I just done? Should I tell someone? Who would believe me? By the time I got home, it was dark. My wife Sarah was waiting up, worried because I was 4 hours later than I'd said I'd be. "Where were you?" she asked. I was about to send someone looking. I almost told her. The words were right there, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the way the creature had looked at me. That intelligence, that trust. Maybe it was my grandfather's old stories echoing in my head. Maybe it was just instinct. "Got lost tracking an elk," I said. "Went farther than I meant to." "Did you get it?" "No, but I found something else." She waited for me to elaborate, but I didn't. I couldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment in my head. The eyes, the nod, the offered branch leaning against our cabin wall outside, the touch on my shoulder. It had understood me. It had communicated with me, and it had shown me something I'd never seen in any animal: gratitude. 3 days later, I went back. I told Sarah I was checking my trap lines, which wasn't entirely a lie. I did have traps in that general direction. But I went past them, back toward where I'd found the creature, carrying my rifle and a pack with extra food. I didn't really expect to find it again. The forest was vast, and surely it had moved on, put distance between itself and the human who'd seen it. But when I got close to the clearing where we'd met, I found something that made me stop cold. There was a pile of deer meat laid out on a flat rock, covered with large leaves to keep the flies off. Fresh meat, carefully butchered, and beside it, my Winchester rifle, which I'd left propped against a tree while I was working to free the creature's leg. I'd completely forgotten about the rifle in all the excitement. The creature had brought it back to me, and left meat as payment. I stood there looking at this impossible gift, and I realized something profound. This wasn't just an animal acting on instinct. This was a thinking being who understood concepts like reciprocity, gratitude, and debt. This was someone, not something. I took the rifle but left most of the meat, taking only a small piece. I didn't need the payment, and I wanted the creature to know that. Then I did something that probably wasn't smart. I sat down on a log and waited. An hour passed, then another. The forest settled into its afternoon rhythms around me, birds calling, squirrels chattering, the wind moving through the high branches. Just when I was about to give up, I heard a sound behind me. A soft footfall, too heavy to be a deer. I turned slowly. The creature was standing about 30 feet away, partially hidden behind a massive cedar. It was watching me, and the injured leg looked better, still favoring it, but able to put more weight on it. We looked at each other. I slowly raised one hand, palm out, the universal sign for peace. The creature watched for a moment. Then it raised one massive hand, palm out, mirroring my gesture. And I knew in that moment that my life had just changed forever. Over the next 3 months, I returned to that part of the forest every Sunday, and every Sunday, the creature was there waiting. We never spoke. It couldn't form words the way humans do, but we developed something deeper than language, a trust that would define the rest of my life and cost me more than I could have imagined. Those first meetings were cautious on both sides. I'd arrive at the clearing and the creature would be somewhere nearby, watching. Sometimes I'd see it immediately, standing in the shadows between trees. Other times, I'd just feel its presence, that weight of being observed by something large and intelligent. I'd sit on the same log, moving slowly, keeping my hands visible, and eventually it would come closer. By the fourth week, it was sitting across from me, maybe 15 feet away, close enough that I could see details I'd missed in that first frantic encounter. The hair wasn't uniform, it was longer on the shoulders and back, shorter and lighter on the chest. The hands were remarkable, with long fingers and what looked like fingernails, not claws. The face, when seen in better light, had expressions I could read: curiosity, caution, something that might have been amusement when I slipped on wet moss and nearly fell. I started bringing things: an apple from our small orchard, which it examined carefully before eating, some dried salmon, which it seemed to genuinely enjoy, a wool blanket when the November rains started, which it wrapped around its shoulders like it understood exactly what it was for. And slowly, carefully, we learned to communicate. It started with simple gestures. I'd point at something, a tree, the sky, water, and say the word. The creature would watch intently, and sometimes it would point at the same thing and make a sound. Not words, but specific sounds that were clearly its way of naming things. I began to understand that it had its own language, complex vocalizations that carried meaning even if I couldn't reproduce them. I learned it was male. That much became clear from physical characteristics, though I don't know why it mattered to me to know. Maybe because calling him it felt wrong once I understood how intelligent he was. I learned he was old, not ancient, but not young either. There was gray mixed into the reddish-brown hair around his face, and sometimes he moved with the careful deliberation of someone whose body had accumulated injuries over years. When I pointed at him and then held up fingers trying to ask his age, he showed me both hands multiple times, more than 50 years certainly, maybe as many as 70 or 80. I learned he was alone. That realization came gradually, painfully. He never led me to others of his kind, never made sounds like he was calling to anyone. When I gestured questions about family, about others like him, he would look away, make a low sound that communicated sadness more clearly than words ever could. Whatever had happened, he was the last one in these mountains, perhaps the last one anywhere. By December, I was spending every free moment I had in the forest with him. Sarah noticed the change in me, the distraction, the secrecy about where I was going. We had our first real fight on Christmas Eve. "You're gone every Sunday," she said, bouncing our crying son Thomas on her hip. "You barely talk to me anymore. You come home exhausted and covered in mud, and you won't tell me what you're doing out there." "I'm just hunting." "Don't lie to me, Joseph." Her voice cracked. "You haven't brought home game in weeks. You're not checking trap lines. I asked your brother, and he said you haven't been to the trappers' cabins in over a month. So what are you doing? Is there someone else?" The accusation hit me like a physical blow. "No, Sarah, no, there's no other woman. I swear on Thomas's life." "Then what? What could possibly be so important that you're willing to let your family worry?" I almost told her then. The words were right there. But I thought about what would happen if I did. She'd either think I was insane, or she'd believe me and tell someone, and if she told someone, others would come. Hunters with bigger guns, scientists who'd want to capture him, study him, curiosity seekers who'd turn these sacred mountains into a circus. "There's something in the forest," I said carefully, "something I need to protect. That's all I can tell you." She stared at me for a long moment, tears in her eyes. "I don't know who you are anymore." She took Thomas to her mother's house that night. They stayed there for 3 days, and I spent Christmas alone in our cabin, wondering if I was destroying my marriage for something no one would ever believe existed. But I kept going back. In January, I brought paper and a pencil. I drew simple pictures: a man, a tree, a deer, and he watched with intense interest. Then I handed him the pencil, and after examining it carefully, he began to draw. His first attempts were crude, his massive fingers struggling with the small pencil. But he learned quickly. Within an hour, he was drawing recognizable shapes: a mountain, water, trees. And then he drew something that made my breath catch. He drew a figure, tall, broad-shouldered, clearly meant to be one of his kind. Then he drew smaller figures around it, 4 of them. And then he drew those 4 figures with X marks through them. "Your family?" I asked quietly. He looked at me with those dark eyes and nodded. Then he pointed at the single remaining figure in his drawing and touched his own chest. Alone. He was alone because the others were gone. "What happened to them?" I asked, knowing he couldn't explain in detail but needing to ask anyway. He drew more. Human figures with sticks. Guns, I realized. He drew them pointing at his kind. He drew his family running, hiding. He drew them being hunted. "People hunted them," I said, feeling sick. "People took your family from you." He nodded and made a sound so full of grief that I had to look away. Then he drew something else that made my stomach turn. He drew a figure of his kind lying down and human figures standing over it, examining it, poking it with sticks. He drew more humans coming, gathering around. They hadn't just taken his family, they treated them like trophies, like curiosities. We sat in silence for a long time after that. Then I did something that I'd been thinking about for weeks. I pulled out my hunting knife, slowly, carefully, showing him it wasn't a threat. And I carved a mark into the log we always sat on, a simple symbol, one my grandfather had taught me. The mark meant protected in the old way. "I won't let anyone hurt you," I said. "I promise. You have my word." He watched me carve, understanding somehow that this was significant. Then he reached out and touched the symbol with one finger, tracing it carefully. When he looked back at me, there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Hope, maybe, or trust so deep it felt like a physical weight. That was the moment the promise truly began, the moment I committed to protecting something the world wasn't ready to know about. But keeping that promise would prove harder than I imagined. In February, I was working at the logging camp when I overheard 2 hunters talking during lunch break. They were excited, passing around a plaster cast of what they claimed was a track they'd found in the mountains. "Biggest bear track I've ever seen," one of them said. "Must be a monster grizzly up there." I looked at the cast and felt my blood run cold. It wasn't a bear track. The shape was wrong, the toe pattern was wrong. It was his track. "Where did you find this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "About 15 miles northeast of here, up near Eagle Creek. We're going back next weekend with better guns. That bear hide is going to look good on my wall." That night, I broke my pattern. Instead of waiting until Sunday, I hiked into the mountains by moonlight, pushing myself hard over dangerous terrain. I had to warn him, had to make sure he understood the danger. I found him near the clearing, and the moment he saw me, he stood up, sensing my urgency. I was breathing hard from the fast hike, and I gestured frantically, trying to communicate. I drew in the dirt with a stick, the clearing where we usually met. Then I drew human figures approaching it with guns. Then I made an X over the clearing and pointed northeast, away from where the hunters had found the tracks. "You need to move," I said. "Stay away from here. Stay away from anywhere near Eagle Creek. There are men coming with guns, understand?" He watched the drawing, then looked at me. He understood. But instead of showing fear, he reached out and touched my shoulder again, like he had that first day. Then he made a gesture, pointing at me, then at himself, then clasping his hands together. Together. "We face this together." "No," I said firmly. "You hide. Go deep into the forest. I'll deal with the hunters. I'll lead them away. That's my part in this. Your part is to stay alive." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. He pointed at himself, then at the dense forest to the north, then made a gesture like disappearing into smoke. "Yes?" I said, relieved. "Exactly. Hide until I come find you and tell you it's safe." He touched my shoulder one more time, then disappeared into the darkness, moving silently despite his size. That weekend, I joined the hunting party that went looking for the monster grizzly. I volunteered to lead, claiming I knew the area well. And I did, well enough to lead them in completely the wrong direction, south when they should have gone north, through the most difficult terrain I could find. By the end of the second day, they were exhausted, frustrated, and convinced that whatever had made those tracks had moved on. Probably was just a normal bear, one of them grumbled as we hiked back to the trucks. Tracks probably looked bigger than they were because the ground was soft. Yeah, I agreed, my conscience screaming at me for the lie. Probably nothing special. I met him again 3 weeks later at a new location deep in a valley I'd never explored before. He'd moved his territory, staying far from anywhere humans were likely to go. When he saw me, he made a sound that might have been relief. I'd brought supplies, food, another blanket, some rope I thought he might find useful. He accepted them with that same gentle nod, then gestured for me to sit. We spent the afternoon in comfortable silence, and I realized something profound. This wasn't just about protecting a rare creature anymore. We'd become friends, real friends, despite the impossible gulf between our species. He showed me things that day, teaching me about the forest in ways I'd never learned, which trees had bark that could treat infections, how to find water in dry seasons by watching where birds flew at dawn, how to read animal tracks not just for what they were, but for how old they were, what the animal was doing, whether it was healthy or sick. His knowledge was vast, accumulated over decades of living in these mountains, and he was sharing it with me, the only human he trusted. In return, I taught him about my world. I brought newspapers and showed him pictures, cities, cars, airplanes, crowds of people. His fascination was clear, but so was something else. Wariness, fear, maybe. He saw what humans had built, how many of us there were, how we changed everything we touched. And he understood, I think, why he needed to stay hidden. Not just from hunters, but from everyone. Because even well-meaning humans would destroy what made him unique. They'd want to study him, document him, prove he existed, and in doing so, they'd take away his freedom, his peace, his right to exist on his own terms. By spring, my routine was established. I'd tell Sarah I was checking trap lines or hunting, and I'd spend hours in the mountains with him. Sarah and I had reconciled after that Christmas fight, but the distance between us remained. She knew I was keeping something from her, and it hurt her. But I couldn't tell her the truth. I couldn't tell anyone. The secret was becoming a weight I carried alone, getting heavier every day. But every time I thought about breaking my promise, I'd remember those drawings. His family being hunted, being treated like animals to be displayed, and I knew I'd made the right choice, no matter what it cost me personally. In May, something happened that changed everything. We were sitting by a stream and he was showing me how to catch fish with my bare hands, a technique that required patience I didn't have, when he suddenly went rigid. His head snapped up, nostrils flaring. Then I heard it too. Voices. Human voices getting closer. He looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw something I'd never seen before. Not fear for himself, but fear for me. If we were found together, if people saw me with him, they'd know I'd been protecting him. They'd know I'd been lying. "Go," I whispered urgently. "Now." He hesitated, clearly not wanting to leave me. "Go," I said louder. He disappeared into the underbrush just as 3 hikers came around the bend. They greeted me cheerfully, asking if I'd had any luck fishing. I chatted with them for a few minutes, my heart pounding, knowing he was nearby listening. After they left, he didn't come back. Not that day. I sat by that stream until dark, but he stayed hidden. And I realized something important. He wasn't just protecting himself anymore. He was protecting me too. We were in this together now, both of us keeping the same dangerous secret, both of us understanding that exposure would destroy everything. And over the years that followed, that understanding would only deepen until protecting him became not just a promise I'd made, but the defining purpose of my entire life, even when it cost me everything I held dear. 50 years is a long time to keep a secret, long enough to watch your son grow up confused about why his father disappeared into the mountains every week, long enough to bury a wife who never stopped wondering what you were hiding, long enough to become an old man who realizes the promise he made as a young one has cost him everything except the one thing that mattered most, keeping that promise. The years between 1935 and 1985 passed in a rhythm that became my life. Every week I'd make the journey into the mountains. Every week I'd find him waiting, a little grayer, a little slower, but still there, still alive, still free. We developed a system. I'd leave supplies in specific locations. He'd leave signs, showing me where he'd moved to as the seasons changed. We rarely met face-to-face anymore, not after that close call with the hikers. It was safer that way. But safety is an illusion that eventually shatters. It's October 1985 now, and I'm sitting in a folding chair in a temporary office set up in the Olympic National Forest Ranger Station. I'm 75 years old, my joints ache every morning, and my son Thomas barely speaks to me. Across the table sits a man in his 40s wearing a dark suit that's too clean for these mountains. His name is Agent Richard Phillips, and his identification says he's with the Department of the Interior, though I suspect that's not the whole truth. There's another man in the corner, younger, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. They've been asking me questions for 3 hours, and my answers haven't changed. Mr. Red Crow, Phillips says, his patience clearly wearing thin, we have 17 documented sightings in the past 8 weeks. 17. That's more than the previous 5 years combined. Hikers, campers, even 2 of our own park rangers have reported seeing something in these mountains. Something large, bipedal, and definitely not a bear. People see lots of things in the forest, I say calmly. Shadows, their own fears. The mind plays tricks in the wilderness. These aren't tricks, Phillips says, pulling photographs from a folder. He spreads them across the table. Blurry images, yes, but clear enough to see a large shape moving between trees, clear enough to see something that shouldn't exist. This was taken by a hiker 2 months ago. And this, he pulls out a plaster cast. This was made from a track found near the Hoh River, 18 inches long, 5 toes, not a bear, not a human. What is it, Mr. Red Crow? I look at the cast and my heart sinks. It's his track. After 50 years of being careful, something has changed. He's being seen. The question is why? I don't know what that is, I lie. Phillips leans back in his chair, studying me. You've lived on the edge of this forest your entire life. 75 years. You worked as a logger, a hunting guide, a wilderness consultant for the Park Service. You know these mountains better than anyone alive. And you're telling me you've never seen anything unusual? I've seen plenty of unusual things. Nature is full of surprises. Stop playing games, Phillips says, his voice hardening. We've been watching you, Mr. Red Crow. For the past month, we've had surveillance on your movements. Every Tuesday and Friday, you drive to the same trailhead. You hike 7 miles into restricted territory. Yes, restricted. You've been trespassing in areas closed to public access. You stay for approximately 4 hours, then you return. What are you doing out there? So they've been following me. The realization hits like a punch to the gut. If they've been watching me, have they seen him? I'm an old man who likes to walk in the woods, I say. There's no law against that. There is when you're trespassing in protected areas. There is when you're interfering with a federal investigation. Phillips pulls out another folder. We've also been looking into your history. In 1936, you led a hunting party away from an area where tracks had been found. You claimed the area was too dangerous, but your route made no sense geographically. In 1952, you reported false information about a supposed grisly attack that closed down an entire valley for 3 months. In 1967, you testified at a county hearing to block a logging road, claiming it would disturb sacred sites, which our researchers have found no historical evidence of. He spreads more papers across the table. Decades of my small acts of protection laid out like evidence of crimes. You've been systematically misdirecting, misleading, and obstructing anyone who got too close to something in these mountains for 50 years. That's not coincidence. That's purpose. So I'll ask you one more time, what are you protecting? I look at this government man with his clean suit and his folders full of my life, and I realize the game is over. They know. Maybe they don't have proof yet, but they know. If I told you, I say quietly, you wouldn't believe me. Try me. I'm silent for a long moment, weighing my options. Then I remember something my grandfather told me once. Sometimes the only way to protect something is to stop hiding it. Sometimes you have to make people understand why it needs to stay hidden. I need to show you something, I say, but not here, out there, in the forest. Phillips exchanges a glance with the note-taker. Show us what? What you've been looking for, what all those hikers and rangers have seen. But I have conditions. You're not in a position to make conditions, Mr. Red Crow. Yes, I am, because without me, you'll never find it. These mountains are vast, and it knows how to hide. It's been hiding for longer than you've been alive. You can search for years and find nothing but shadows and tracks. Or you can come with me under my conditions, and I'll show you the truth. Phillips leans forward, and I can see the hunger in his eyes, the desire to be the one who proves it exists. What conditions? No weapons, no large groups, just you and maybe one other person. No tranquilizer guns, no nets, no equipment meant for capture. And you listen to what I have to say before you make any decisions about what happens next. If this thing is dangerous, it's not dangerous. It's never hurt anyone, in 50 years not once. But it will run if it feels threatened, and you'll lose your only chance to see it. The younger man in the corner speaks for the first time. Sir, if there really is some kind of undiscovered primate out there, we need to document it properly. We need scientific equipment, a team. Then you'll never see it, I interrupt. It took me months to earn its trust. It won't show itself to a crowd of scientists with cameras and measuring tapes. It will disappear, and all you'll have are more blurry photographs and plaster casts. Phillips is quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then he says, if we agree to your conditions, and you're wasting our time with some elaborate hoax, you'll be charged with obstruction of a federal investigation. You could spend what's left of your life in prison. I understand. And if this thing does exist, we can't just walk away. It would need to be studied, protected. Protected, I say firmly. That word is important. Remember it, because what I'm going to show you, what I'm going to tell you about these mountains and that creature and what humans have done, it's going to change how you think about protection. Philip studies my face, looking for signs of deception or delusion. Whatever he sees there must be convincing, because he finally nods. Okay, tomorrow morning, just me and Agent Torres here. No weapons, like you said, but Mr. Red Crow, if this is a waste of time, it won't be, I say. I promise you that. That night, I don't sleep. I sit on the porch of my small house on the reservation, looking out at the dark shape of the mountains against the stars, and I think about what I'm about to do. For 50 years, I've kept him hidden, protected him from a world that would treat him like a specimen, a curiosity, a thing to be studied and displayed. But the world has found him anyway. The hikers, the photographs, the attention, something has changed. Either he's getting careless in his old age, or he's tired of hiding, or the mountains themselves are shrinking as more people push into the wilderness. Whatever the reason, the secret is out. And now I have to make a choice. Let these government men stumble around the forest, probably bringing in more people, more equipment, turning these sacred mountains into a circus, or control the revelation. Show them the truth on my terms. Make them understand why he needs to be protected, not captured. My son Thomas finds me on the porch around midnight. He's 49 now, looks more like his mother than me, and we haven't had a real conversation in years. I heard you were brought in for questioning, he says, not sitting down. Something about the Bigfoot sightings everyone's talking about. Yeah. They think you know something. Yeah. He's quiet for a moment. Do you? I look up at him. At this son I barely know because I spent his childhood in the mountains with a promise I couldn't explain. Yes. All those years, he says, his voice tight. All those times you disappeared. All those times Mom asked where you were going and you just walked away. All those birthdays and school events and family dinners you missed. It was all about this? About some creature in the woods? It's not just some creature, Thomas. Then what is it? What could possibly be important enough that you chose it over your own family? I want to tell him. I want to explain about the promise, about the trust, about the last remnant of something ancient and important that needed protecting. But I don't have the words. I never have. Tomorrow, I say instead. Tomorrow you'll understand if you want to. If I want to what? Come with me, come see what I've been protecting all these years. The agent said 2 people. I want it to be you. Thomas stares at me like I've lost my mind. You want me to go traipsing through the mountains with you and 2 federal agents to look for Bigfoot? I want you to see the truth, and maybe understand why I made the choices I made. I don't need to see some animal to understand that you were a terrible father. The words hit hard, but I can't argue with them. You're right, I was. But this isn't about me being a good father. It's about something bigger than that, something that matters. More than family? More than your own son? I think about that question, really think about it, and I realize the honest answer is complicated in ways I can't explain. Come tomorrow, I say, finally. Then you can judge for yourself. Thomas stands there for another moment, then turns to walk away. But he stops at the door and says, without looking back, "What time?" "Dawn. Meet me at the ranger station." He doesn't respond, just goes inside, but I know he'll be there. Curiosity, if nothing else, will bring him. I sit on that porch until the sky starts to lighten, thinking about what I'm about to do, about the promise I made 50 years ago to a creature trapped under a fallen tree, about all the years since, all the secrets, all the lies, all the sacrifices. And I think about what he must be feeling now, if he knows what's coming. After 50 years of hiding, of being protected, of living in the shadows, does he sense that everything is about to change? I hope he understands that I'm doing this for him, that bringing these men to see him is the only way to control what happens next. That sometimes the best way to protect something is to stop hiding it and start making people see why it matters. But I won't know if I made the right choice until it's too late to change it. The sun rises over the Olympic Mountains, beautiful and indifferent, and I head to my truck. Today, after 50 years, the secret ends, and I have no idea what comes after. We meet at the ranger station just after dawn. Phillips is there in hiking gear that's too new, Agent Torres with a backpack full of equipment I specifically said not to bring, and Thomas looking like he regrets coming, but too stubborn to back out now. The morning air is cold and fog hangs low over the mountains. No cameras, I say immediately, pointing at Torres's backpack. No recording devices, no measuring equipment, nothing that will make it feel like you're here to study it. Mr. Red Crow, we need some form of documentation, Torres starts. You'll have your eyes and your memory, that's all. This isn't a science experiment. This is a meeting between beings. You do it with respect or not at all. Phillips puts a hand on Torres's shoulder. Leave the equipment in the car. Torres looks like he wants to argue, but he sees something in my face that makes him comply. He pulls a camera and what looks like audio recording equipment from his pack, locking them in their government vehicle. Thomas hasn't said a word. He's just watching me with an expression I can't read. Anger, maybe, or curiosity, or both. How far are we going? Phillips asks. About 8 miles. The terrain is rough. We'll be climbing. If you can't keep up, speak now. We can keep up, Phillips says. We start walking. I lead them on trails I've walked 1,000 times, paths that aren't on any map because they're my paths, created over 50 years of weekly journeys. The forest is quiet this morning, too quiet. The birds aren't singing, and that makes me nervous. Either they sense the unusual presence of so many humans, or they sense something else. After 2 hours of hiking, Phillips breaks the silence. Tell me about the first time you saw it. When was it? How did it happen? I keep walking, my old knees protesting the pace, but my determination overriding the pain. October 1935, I was 25. I found it trapped under a fallen tree, injured. I helped free it. And it didn't attack you. No, it understood I was helping. It thanked me. Torres, hiking behind us, makes a sound of disbelief. Thanked you? How does a creature like that express gratitude? The same way any intelligent being does, through gesture, through recognition, through memory. I glance back at him. You're making a mistake that most people make, Agent Torres. You're assuming that because something doesn't use words, it can't communicate. You're assuming that because something lives in the forest instead of a city, it must be primitive. You're wrong on both counts. We climb higher, and the forest changes around us. The trees here are older, thicker, spaced farther apart. The undergrowth is dense with ferns and moss. This is old-growth forest, the kind that barely exists anymore outside protected areas. Thomas finally speaks. All those years, all those Sundays you disappeared, you were coming here to see this thing? Not a thing, I correct him. Him. And yes, every week for 50 years. Why? The question is simple but carries decades of hurt. Why was this creature more important than your own family? I stop walking and turn to face him. The agent stopped too, sensing this is important. Because his family was taken from him, I say quietly. Because he was the last one left, completely alone in a world that wanted to hunt him, or study him, or prove he existed, because someone needed to make sure he could live out his life in peace. And because I made a promise. A promise to an animal, Thomas says bitterly. A promise to someone who saved my life, I reply. 3 times over the years, once from a fall, when I was tracking in winter and broke through ice over a hidden stream. Once from a cougar that was stalking me, and I didn't even know it was there. And once, I pause, the memory still painful, once when I had pneumonia and got lost in a snowstorm. I collapsed in the forest, and he found me. Carried me most of the way back to the ranger road where someone could find me. Thomas stares at me. You never told us any of this. Oh, how could I? How could I explain that a creature science says doesn't exist saved my life multiple times? You'd have thought I was losing my mind. Phillips has been listening intently. If it saved your life, why not go public? Prove it exists. Show the world that it's intelligent, peaceful. Because the world doesn't care about intelligent and peaceful when there's money to be made or careers to be built, I interrupt. You think scientists would just observe and leave it alone? You think the media wouldn't turn these mountains into a circus? You think hunters wouldn't come from all over trying to bag the trophy of a lifetime? There are laws, Torres begins. Laws didn't protect the buffalo, I say flatly. Laws didn't protect the wolves. Laws didn't protect my own people when the government decided it wanted our land. Laws are written by humans for human benefit. And this creature, I gesture toward the mountains ahead, doesn't fit into your legal categories. It's not quite human, not quite animal. What would you classify it as? What rights would it have? Who would decide? The question hangs in the air, unanswered. We walk for another hour in silence. The terrain gets steeper, and I can hear the agents breathing hard. Thomas, younger and stronger, keeps pace behind me without complaint. Finally, we reach a valley I know well. A small creek runs through it, and the trees form a natural canopy overhead. It's peaceful here, isolated, the kind of place where the modern world feels very far away. I stop and hold up my hand. Wait here, let me go first. Why? Phillips asks. Because he knows me, He doesn't know you. If all four of us just walk in there, he'll disappear, and you'll never see him. I need to let him know we're here, that you're not a threat." I can see Phillips wants to argue, but he nods. "How long?" "As long as it takes." I walk into the valley alone, following the creek. My heart is pounding, and it's not from the hike. What am I doing? After 50 years of protection, I'm bringing strangers to meet him. Am I betraying the promise or fulfilling it in the only way I can? I reach the place where I usually leave supplies, a hollow beneath a massive fallen log. There's a stick propped against the log, positioned in a specific way. Our signal. He's nearby. I sit down on the log and wait. 5 minutes pass. 10. I can feel the agents and Thomas watching from the distance, wondering if this is all an elaborate hoax, if the old Indian has finally lost his mind. Then I hear it. The sound I've heard 1,000 times over 50 years, a low vocalization, not quite animal, not quite human, questioning. "It's me," I say quietly. "Joseph. I'm sorry I brought others. But things have changed. They've been seeing you. They know you exist, and I thought maybe it was time." Silence. Then, movement in the trees to my left. And he emerges from the shadows. 50 years older than when I first saw him. The reddish-brown hair is now more gray than brown, especially around his face and shoulders. He moves more slowly, with the careful deliberation of age and accumulated injuries, but he's still massive, maybe 7'2", perhaps slightly shorter than he was in his prime. The shoulders are still impossibly broad, the hands still capable of incredible strength. But it's the eyes that hit me hardest. Those same intelligent, aware eyes that looked at me with trust 50 years ago. Now they hold something else too. Weariness, acceptance, and maybe, just maybe, relief. We look at each other, old friends who've shared a secret for half a century. "They need to see," I say. "They need to understand. Is that okay?" He looks past me toward where the others are waiting. For a long moment, he doesn't move. Then, slowly, he nods. I stand and gesture to the others. "You can come, slowly. No sudden movements. Show respect." The 3 men approach cautiously. I hear Torres whisper, "Oh my God," under his breath. Phillips has stopped walking entirely, frozen in shock about 30 feet away. But Thomas keeps walking until he's standing beside me, staring at this impossible being. "Dad," he whispers, "is this real?" "Yes." The creature, no, not creature, never creature again, watches them approach. He doesn't show fear, but he doesn't move closer either. He's assessing them, judging them, deciding if they're a threat. Phillips finally finds his voice. "Mr. Red Crow, what is it?" "He's what's left," I say simply. "The last one in these mountains, maybe the last one anywhere. His family was hunted, taken, treated like animals to be displayed, and he's been hiding here ever since, trying to survive in a world that's getting smaller every year." Torres has pulled out a small notebook despite my warnings, his hands shaking as he writes. The size, the build, the bipedal stance, this is extraordinary. This could rewrite everything we know about primate evolution. This isn't about evolution, I interrupt. This isn't about science. This is about understanding what we've done. "What do you mean?" Phillips asks, still staring. I look at my old friend standing there in the dappled sunlight, and I remember all the things he showed me over the years, all the lessons about the forest, about balance, about the cost of human expansion. Over 50 years he taught me things, I say slowly, about these mountains, about how they used to be before we came. He showed me places where his kind used to live, meadows that are now logged clear, valleys that are now roads, streams that are now polluted. He showed me the cost of what we call progress. I step closer to him, and he reaches out one massive hand, touching my shoulder the way he did that first day. "But the most important thing he showed me," I continue, "is what happens when humans find something rare and beautiful. We have 2 choices. We can protect it and let it be, or we can consume it, study it, document it, control it, until there's nothing left of what made it special in the first place. Phillips is quiet for a long moment. Then he says, "You're asking us to walk away, to pretend we never saw this." I'm asking you to understand what you're looking at, not a specimen, not a scientific curiosity, a person, the last person of his kind, living quietly in these mountains, bothering no one, just trying to exist. Thomas is still staring, and I see tears on his face. "All those years," he says softly, "all those times you chose this over us. I thought you were running away from family, but you were protecting someone who had no family left." "I should have done better," I say to my son. "I should have found a way to do both, but I didn't know how, and I'm sorry." The old giant makes a sound then, low and rumbling, and gestures toward Thomas. Then he touches his own chest and makes the same gesture from his chest toward Thomas. Recognition, understanding, sympathy for the son who grew up without a father. Thomas takes a step forward. "Can I?" I nod. Slowly. "Let him decide." Thomas approaches with his hand out, and after a moment's hesitation, the giant reaches out and takes it. The size difference is staggering. Thomas's hand disappears in that massive palm, but the touch is gentle. "Careful." "I'm sorry," Thomas says, though I don't know if he's apologizing for doubting me all these years or apologizing on behalf of humanity for what we've done to this being's family. Maybe both. Phillips watches this exchange, and I can see the conflict on his face. The scientist who wants to document and study, the government official who has protocols to follow, and the human being who's witnessing something profound. "What do you want us to do?" he finally asks me. "I want you to make a choice," I say. "You can report this, bring in teams, set up research stations, turn these mountains into a study area. You'll get your documentation, your proof, your scientific papers, but you'll take away the one thing he has left, his freedom to exist on his own terms." "Or," Phillips prompts, "or you declare this area permanently restricted. No logging, no development, no public access. You protect these mountains not because of what's here, but because some places need to stay wild. And you walk away without ever telling anyone what you saw here today." "That's asking a lot," Torres says. The scientific community will survive without this," I interrupt. "The question is whether he will survive with your attention." We stand in that valley, 5 beings, separated by evolution, but connected by this moment. The sun moves higher and birds begin to sing again, the forest accepting our presence. And I wait for these men to decide what happens next. Whether 50 years of protection ends in triumph or tragedy. Whether the promise I made as a young man will be honored or broken. The old giant watches too, patient and wise, having survived this long by staying hidden, now exposed, trusting me to have made the right choice in bringing these strangers to meet him. I hope I have, but I won't know until Phillips makes his decision. Phillips stands there for what feels like an eternity, looking at this impossible being, wrestling with a decision that will define the rest of his career and, possibly, the rest of that creature's life. The morning sun has climbed higher now, and the valley is warming up, but the tension in the air is still cold. "Before I decide," Phillips says finally, "I need to understand something. You said it taught you things about humans, about what we've done. What exactly did it show you?" I look at my old friend, and he looks back at me with those wise, tired eyes. And I realize this is the moment I've been preparing for. This is why I brought these men here. Not just to see him, but to understand what he represents, what his existence means about us. "It's not what he showed me," I say slowly. "It's what I learned by watching him survive for 50 years while the world closed in around him." I walk closer to the giant, and he remains still, allowing me to speak for both of us. When I first met him in 1935, these mountains were still wild, truly wild. There were places no human had ever walked, forests so deep and old they felt like stepping back to the beginning of time. He had territory that stretched for hundreds of square miles. He could move freely, find food easily, live without fear. I pause, gathering my thoughts. Over 50 years, I watched that territory shrink. Logging roads pushed deeper into the forest. Housing developments crept up the foothills. Hiking trails multiplied. The Park Service opened areas that used to be restricted. Every year his safe space got smaller. Every year he had to move farther, hide more carefully, take bigger risks, just to find food and water. Torres is writing this down, but I don't stop him. This needs to be recorded. But that's not the worst part, I continue. The worst part is what I saw in how people reacted when they caught glimpses of him. In the 50s, a hunter saw him from a distance. Instead of being amazed or respectful, the man's first instinct was to shoot. He missed, thank God, but he tried. He saw something incredible and rare, and his immediate response was to try to take it. I can feel the anger rising in my voice, decades of frustration finally finding release. In the 60s, a logger spotted him near a clear-cut. The man didn't shoot, but he told everyone. Within a week, there were 50 people tramping through those woods with cameras and guns, tearing up the undergrowth, leaving trash, scaring off all the wildlife. They turned his home into a hunting ground. Every single time someone saw him, the response was the same: consume, capture, control, prove. Never once did anyone see him and think, maybe I should leave this alone. Never once did curiosity lead to respect instead of exploitation. Thomas is listening intently now, and I can see understanding dawning on his face. But there's more, I say, my voice quieter now. Over the years, he showed me things, places where his kind used to live. There was a valley about 20 miles north of here. Beautiful meadow, fresh water, caves for shelter. He took me there once and showed me markings on the rocks. His family had lived there for generations. You know what's there now? Philip shakes his head. A parking lot, a visitor center, a gift shop selling t-shirts and postcards. We took their home and turned it into a tourist attraction, and we never even knew they existed. I take a breath, feeling the weight of 50 years of observation. That's what he taught me about humans. We don't know how to leave things alone. We find something beautiful, something rare, something that doesn't belong to us, and we have to possess it, study it, document it, put it behind glass or on film or in a cage. We can't just let it be. And the truly terrible thing, I continue, looking directly at Phillips now, is that we do it with the best intentions. We say we want to protect, to preserve, to study for the good of science. But what we really want is ownership. We want to be the ones who discovered it, who proved it exists, who gets their name in the history books. The valley is completely silent now except for the creek running over stones. He's been watching us for over 70 years, I say. Watching us spread and consume and destroy. Watching us take more and more until there's nothing left. And he learned that the only way to survive was to stay hidden. Not because he's shy or primitive, but because he understood something about us that we don't like to admit. What's that? Torres asks quietly. That we can't help ourselves. We find something that doesn't belong to us, and we take it. Every single time. It's who we are. Phillips looks at the giant, who has been standing perfectly still through this entire speech, listening. Is that true? Phillips asks him directly. Is that what you think of us? The giant doesn't respond with sounds or gestures. He simply looks at Phillips with those ancient, knowing eyes, and the expression on his face says everything: sadness, resignation, acceptance of what humans are, and something else. A question. Will you be different? Phillips turns to me. What do you want from us, Mr. Red Crow? Really? I want you to be the first humans who saw him and chose to walk away, I say simply. I want you to prove that we're capable of restraint, of respect, of understanding that some things are more important than our need to know, to document, to control. You're asking us to keep one of the most significant zoological discoveries in human history a secret, Torres says. Do you understand what you're asking? I'm asking you to let him live out the rest of his life in peace, I reply. He's old, maybe 10 years left, maybe less. He's not going to have offspring. There's no one left for him to have them with. His kind is ending with him, and you can either let that ending be peaceful and dignified, or you can turn his final years into a spectacle. Thomas steps forward. I spent my whole life angry at my father for choosing this creature over his family. But I understand now. He wasn't choosing a creature. He was choosing to be a person who keeps promises, who values trust over convenience, who understands that being human means sometimes we have to choose what's right over what's easy. He looks at Phillips. My father gave up a normal relationship with his son to protect something that couldn't protect itself. That's 50 years of sacrifice. Don't make it meaningless by doing exactly what he was protecting against. Phillips is quiet for a long time. Then he says, Agent Torres, close your notebook. Torres looks up, surprised. Sir? Close it. We're not documenting this. But sir, the evidence... What evidence? Phillips says, his voice firm. We hiked into the mountains with an elderly Native American man who told us stories about a creature he believes he saw 50 years ago. We saw some interesting wildlife, some beautiful scenery, but nothing that requires a federal report. Torres stares at him. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. These mountains stay restricted. We expand the protected zone by another 50 square miles, citing concerns about erosion and endangered plant species. No logging, no development, no increased public access, and we never speak of what we saw here to anyone. Ever. The other sightings, Torres starts, are explainable. Phillips interrupts. Bears on hind legs, shadows, overactive imaginations. We release a statement saying we investigated thoroughly and found no evidence of any large unidentified primates in the Olympic National Forest. Case closed. Torres looks like he wants to argue, but something in Phillips's expression stops him. Finally, he nods and closes his notebook. Phillips turns to the giant. I don't know if you understand me, but I'm making you a promise. These mountains will stay protected. Your home is safe, and no one will ever know why. The giant looks at Phillips for a long moment, then slowly he nods. And in that nod, I see something I haven't seen in 50 years. Not just acceptance, but something like hope. He turns to me and we look at each other one last time. Old friends who have kept a secret together for half a century. He reaches out and touches my shoulder, that familiar gesture of gratitude and farewell. Then he touches Thomas's shoulder the same way. And then he turns and walks back into the forest, moving between the trees with surprising grace for something so large and old. Within seconds, he's disappeared, melted into the shadows as if he was never there. We stand in silence for several minutes. Then Phillips says, we should go. The hike back is quiet, each of us lost in our own thoughts about what we've seen and what it means. When we reach the ranger station, Phillips shakes my hand. Thank you for trusting us with this, he says. I'll make sure the protection order goes through. These mountains will be safe. Not just the mountains, I say. Him, specifically him. I understand. They drive away, and I'm left standing with Thomas in the parking lot. The sun is setting now, painting the mountains in shades of orange and gold. I'm sorry, I say to my son, for all the years I wasn't there, for choosing the promise over you. Thomas is quiet for a moment. Then he says, I'm not going to lie and say it didn't hurt. It did, but I get it now. Someone had to protect him. Someone had to keep the promise. I just wish I'd understood sooner. Would it have made a difference? Maybe, maybe not, but at least I would have known my father wasn't running away from us. He was running towards something more important. We stand there as the light fades, looking at the mountains where an ancient being is settling in for the night, safe for another day, protected by a promise that cost me everything, but meant even more. 3 years have passed since that day. I'm 78 now, and my knees barely work anymore. I don't hike into the mountains every week like I used to. Maybe once a month now, when the weather's good and the pain isn't too bad. But every time I go, I find signs that he's still there. A footprint pressed into mud, a tree branch bent in a specific way. The markers we developed over 50 years to let each other know we're still alive, still keeping the promise. Phillips kept his word. The protection order went through, and that entire section of the Olympic National Forest is now permanently restricted. The official reason is endangered plant species and erosion concerns. But I know the truth. Those mountains are protected because of what lives there. The sightings stopped. Phillips released a statement saying the investigation found no evidence of any large, unidentified primates, and the media moved on to other stories. Some Bigfoot enthusiasts still come to the area, but they're directed to different parts of the forest, away from his territory. Thomas visits me more often now. We talk about things we never talked about before. His childhood, his own kids, the choices we all make and live with. He understands now why I made mine, even if he still wishes I'd found a better balance. But the most important thing is this: I kept my promise. For 53 years now, I've protected something rare and beautiful and ancient. And in return, he showed me something about humanity that haunts me still. We are conquerors by nature. We see something we don't understand, and we have to control it, document it, own it. We can't leave mysteries alone. We can't let beauty exist without trying to capture it. And the saddest part is that we do it thinking we're doing good. We tell ourselves we're protecting, preserving, studying for the benefit of science and humanity. But what we're really doing is taking something wild and free and putting it in a cage, whether that cage is physical or just the cage of human knowledge and classification. He survived by staying hidden, by understanding that humans couldn't be trusted with the knowledge of his existence. And he was right. Every time someone saw him, they tried to take him, shoot him, capture him, prove he existed for fame or fortune or just the satisfaction of being right. The only way he survived was by making one human understand something important, that sometimes the greatest act of love is leaving something alone, that sometimes protection means keeping secrets, that sometimes the measure of our humanity isn't what we discover and document, but what we choose to let remain unknown. I'm old now. I won't live much longer. And when I pass, Thomas has promised to continue the protection in his own way. He won't hike into the mountains. He has his own family, his own life. But he'll make sure the restrictions stay in place. He'll make sure his children understand that those mountains are sacred, even if he can't tell them exactly why. And maybe, if we're lucky, my old friend will live out his remaining years in peace. The last of his kind, watching the world change around him, protected by a promise made by a young man who couldn't bear to see something so magnificent destroyed by human curiosity. That's what he taught me about humans in 50 years. That we are capable of great things, but we're also capable of consuming everything beautiful until nothing wild remains. And that the only way to save what's precious is sometimes to keep it secret, to protect it from our own best intentions. It haunts me still, but I'd make the same choice 1,000 times over. Some promises are worth keeping, no matter the cost.